Thank you for joining us for this short presentation about the hidden story behind one of Glasgow's prominent Mackintosh towers, that at Queen's Cross Church, Glasgow. You will shortly see a series of images which reveal the history and influences behind this unique tower, narrated by Professor Pamela Robertson of the University of Glasgow. You will also hear about the exciting work which is currently being undertaken to investigate the original finial which rose above the tower.
Let's start with the church itself. Mackintosh's Queen's Cross is a particularly significant building in the relatively small and precious canon of Mackintosh's work. The building was commissioned in 1896 and completed in 1899. The project gave the young Mackintosh a significant opportunity to develop his own creative ideas, as we see here in his free interpretation of traditional Gothic forms. Queen's Cross held its first service on the 10th of September 1899, and by 1910 there were 823 on the communion roll. The site was a tight and awkward one, being on a corner plot and butted by tenements and a large warehouse. This historic photograph shows the bustling crossroads of this rapidly expanding part of Glasgow. Shops with awnings, hatted pedestrians, and tram lines and cables. The tower is a prominent feature of the busy junction. Here is the tower today, on the crossroads of Carscube and Maryhill Road. The tower is a dominant feature, uniting the two main elevations and rising above the roofline. The tower is square in plan with an engaged polygonal staired turret. Internally, the tower was intended to house an organ, but this was never installed. Mackintosh had had previous experience of the design and build of towers. The earliest, where his role was that of assistant, was the now demolished Canal Boatmen's Institute in Glasgow, built between 1891 and 1893. The institute provided community, welfare, and educational services. The two-storey red sandstone building had a prominent corner tower in 17th century Scottish style. Contemporary critics remarked on its similarity to the townhouses at Dumfries and Stirling and Glasgow's Old College, the original home of the University of Glasgow. We find greater input and more individuality at Queen Margaret College. This two-storey yellow sandstone building in the West End of Glasgow was designed in the mid-1890s for the teaching of university-level medical curriculum to women. The tower here is set into the inner angle beside the main entrance. Its windows express the rise of the stairs inside. Externally, the lead-covered bell-cast cap and the open arch belfry point to Scottish 17th century sources. And finally, Mackintosh's most imposing tower for one of the major commissions of 1890s Glasgow, a new building for the Glasgow Herald newspaper. The building was largely designed by Mackintosh and built between 1893 and 1899 to house the production of the Herald newspaper and commercial warehousing. Like Queen's Cross, the building sits on a corner site and the tower unites the flanking elevations. At over 44 metres high, its swelling form dominates the skyline. It was also practical. The tower functioned as a water tower with drenchers to deal with the very real threat of fire. Mackintosh drew on many sources, historic and contemporary, in his architectural designs. He also drew on his sketchbooks. In the 1890s, he made a series of sketching trips to England to study in particular local vernacular architecture. One sketch is closely related to the tower at Queen's Cross. In 1895, he visited Somerset and was particularly taken with the tower of its 13th century All Saints in Merriott. Mackintosh clearly returned to this sketch when he came to design Queen's Cross, taking from it the square plan of the tower and its engaged stair turret. This show drawing, Mackintosh's perspective of Queen's Cross, was specifically made for publication and exhibition. It showcases the church, but also Mackintosh's distinctive and breathtaking draftsmanship, seen, for example, in the striations of the sky, the decorative trees, and the dramatic use of light and shadow. This detail shows a vane on the tower comprising three main components: curved arms which rise to form a cage like a closed bud. Above that, the cardinal points of north, south, east, and west, and above that, additional raised arms rising from a central pole, forming a directional weather vane. There is no evidence that this was built. It appears to have been a decorative flourish for Mackintosh's drawing, but it raises questions as to what decorative element finished off the tower. What does survive in situ is a metal cross installed in the late 1950s, clearly not related in any way to Mackintosh and in contravention of the original client, the Free Church of Scotland's practice. The Mackintosh Society recently decided to investigate what had originally been in place and determine whether it could be replicated. Extensive searches have been made through archives and church records, local history collections, holdings of period photographs and other sources, and advice sought from a range of experts. The results have been scant. The best source is a snap taken in the 1940s by Thomas Howarth, a pioneering Mackintosh scholar who was then working on his PhD on Mackintosh. A zoomed-in detail shows a bud-like cage with an open framework above containing the cardinal points, but there is no directional weather vane. Has this been lost? Do we only have partial information? Fortunately, a watercolour was located which can be securely dated to 1900, just after the completion of the church, and which clearly shows the finial with no weather vane. What we are dealing with is not a vane, but a finial with the cardinal points. Central to the research is the ongoing input of Jo Hormuth, an experienced architecture researcher and historic interior restorer. Jo has scrupulously reviewed all of the extant Mackintosh buildings and architectural drawings and concluded that there is indeed sufficient information to proceed to make a new finial. Here we see a page from her detailed research guidance focusing on designs for the Glasgow Herald building. Mackintosh's known metalwork, such as the finials at the Glasgow School of Art, provide valuable information on construction. Interestingly, the finials at the school and the Queen's Cross metalwork were made by the same Glasgow company, George Adam & Co. Information will be taken from past and ongoing conservation work, which provides close-up examination of the originals. The current status of the project is that we now have a working model made by Jo Hormuth. This will inform the final to-scale construction drawings which he is in the process of making. We will then proceed to engage a maker and secure the necessary permissions to install the new finial. Fundraising has begun with generous support from the Monument Trust. This project will allow us to recover an important element of Mackintosh's design for this beautiful building.
We would like to finish by showing you the magnificent view from the top of the tower at Mackintosh Queen's Cross. This is usually inaccessible to visitors and to the public, and we imagine the view that you see today is completely different from when the building first opened in 1899. We hope you've enjoyed unravelling the hidden story behind our Mackintosh Tower and hearing about all the work which is going into the finial project. None of this work would be possible without the Charles Rennie Mackintosh Society, which is a non-profit charity established in 1973 to preserve and promote Charles Rennie Mackintosh's work and legacy. We are very fortunate to have Mackintosh Queen's Cross as our beautiful headquarters, and we do hope that you will come and visit us when it is safe to do so. Thank you again for joining us. Here are our social media handles and websites should you wish to stay connected. Thank you.